Cam Newton is the only QB in NFL history with over 30,000 passing yards and 5,000 rushing yards. He holds the record for the most rushing touchdowns by a quarterback. And in his MVP season, he led the Panthers to a 15-1 record while accounting for 45 total touchdowns. At his peak, he was unstoppable. But just a few years later, everything fell apart. Injuries, scheme changes, and questionable coaching decisions turned a league MVP into a quarterback teams didn't even want to sign. Some say his physical play style made him destined to burn out, while others argue he never had the right supporting cast to reach his full potential. So, how good was Cam Newton actually? Well, to find out, let's go back to Westlake High School in Atlanta, where Cam's football career took off. His father, Cecil Newton Sr., played safety in college, and his older brother, Cecil Jr., made it to the NFL as an offensive lineman. But even in a football household, Cam stood out. By the time he entered high school, he was already 6'4", 230 pounds, and built like a star linebacker. But he always wanted to play quarterback. As a 16-year-old junior, he threw for 2,500 yards with 23 touchdowns, while adding 638 rushing yards and 9 more scores, leading his team to a state championship. He had a rocket arm, elite speed, and a swagger that made him must-see football on Friday nights. But it wasn't just the stats that made him special. It was how he played. Defenders bounced off him like he was a running back. He could flick the ball 50 yards downfield with ease, and when the game was on the line, he took over. And by the end of his high school career, Rivals.com rated Newton a 5-star prospect and the number 2 dual-threat QB in the nation. With his talent, every major college program wanted him. But Newton had his sights set on one of the biggest powerhouses in the country, the University of Florida. Now, unlike his high school career, his college career started out slow because he was joining the peak Florida Gators with reigning Heisman Trophy winner Tim Tebow as the starting quarterback. So, Cam would have to wait his turn. But when he finally got his chance during his sophomore year, everything fell apart. Because in the first game of the season, he suffered a season-ending ankle injury. And if that wasn't bad enough, he was also arrested for allegedly stealing a laptop that same year.
I want to show people and tell people, hey, I had hiccups in my life. That don't define who I really am.
Facing potential discipline from the team, Newton left Florida and was forced to take a different path, junior college. But while most quarterbacks in his position disappear after leaving a powerhouse program, Newton did the opposite. At Blinn College in Texas, he put up over 3,000 passing yards, 38 touchdowns, and led the team to a JUCO national championship. Suddenly, he was the most sought-after QB in the country again. Only this time, he chose to take his talents to Auburn. And in just 1 year, Newton delivered one of the greatest single seasons in college football history. He threw for 2,854 yards, rushed for 1,473 more, and accounted for 50 total touchdowns, which was enough to earn him the Heisman Trophy. But his dominance came with controversy. Back before the days of NIL, reports surfaced that Newton's father had tried to negotiate a pay-for-play deal with Mississippi State prior to the season. According to NCAA investigations, Newton's father and a recruiter named Kenny Rogers had wanted up to $180,000 in exchange for Cam's commitment to Mississippi State before he ultimately chose Auburn.
My father was slandered in the media. It was devastating for me.
So now, everyone questioned whether Auburn made a similar offer, though no evidence was ever found. Every week, media speculation grew. Some fans and analysts were worried that Auburn's storybook season would be ruined. Others argued that Newton's Heisman Trophy should be revoked. Still, none of it could stop him. He ultimately carried Auburn to a 14-0 record and led the Tigers to a national championship victory. In 1 year, he went from junior college exile to the best player in the country. And with the number 1 pick in the 2011 NFL Draft, the Carolina Panthers made it official. Cam Newton was the future of the league. But there were doubts. Many questioned if his run-heavy college style would work in the NFL, and others were concerned that he only played 1 real season of Division I football. So, it was time for Newton to put up or shut up. And in his first NFL game, Newton threw for 422 passing yards, the most ever by a rookie in their debut. Just a week later, he followed that up with 432 yards, becoming the first quarterback in history to throw for 400-plus yards in each of his first 2 games. Suddenly, the questions about whether he had an NFL-caliber arm disappeared. But he wasn't just lighting it up through the air, he was also dominating on the ground. Newton's combination of size, speed, and power made him nearly impossible to stop in short yardage and red zone situations. And by the end of the year, he had 14 rushing touchdowns, breaking the NFL's single-season record for a quarterback. He finished the season with 4,051 passing yards, the most by a rookie in history at the time, 21 passing touchdowns, 706 rushing yards to go along with all his touchdowns on the ground, and he won the Offensive Rookie of the Year award with ease. He was unlike anything the league had ever seen, and Newton brought an entirely new swagger to the Panthers. His confidence, playmaking ability, and now iconic Superman celebration made him one of the most electrifying players in the NFL from day one. Newton had taken a team that went 2-14 the year before and made them relevant again as a rookie. So, naturally, Carolina was expected to take a step forward next season. But the year didn't start that way. Through the first half of the season, Newton and the Panthers struggled. The offense was inconsistent, turnovers became a problem, and Carolina opened their campaign 1-6, with Cam throwing just 5 touchdowns to 8 interceptions in those games. The same quarterback who looked unstoppable as a rookie suddenly looked frustrated. His leadership was questioned, and his body language on the sideline, especially after losses, became a major talking point. Some analysts started to wonder if he had hit a wall, or if defenses had figured out how to slow him down. But those narratives didn't last long, because over the second half of the season, Newton flipped a switch. In the final 8 games, he was one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the league, throwing 13 touchdowns to just 4 interceptions, while also rushing for 4 more scores. His completion percentage went up, his decision-making improved, and the Panthers started winning. They closed the season 5-1, but unfortunately missed the playoffs once again. Regardless, closing the year on that sort of run left fans with plenty of optimism going into the next season. And in 2013, Carolina reverted back to their old ways. The Panthers opened the year 1-3, with Newton struggling in key moments. And after a tough Week 4 loss to the Cardinals, where he threw 3 interceptions, questions about his consistency and whether or not he was actually a franchise quarterback resurfaced. But over the next 2 months, the Panthers caught fire, winning 8 straight games. And Newton played the best football of his career, leading game-winning drives against the Patriots and 49ers, 2 of the best teams in the league. Against New England on Monday Night Football, he outdueled Tom Brady, throwing for 209 yards, 3 touchdowns, and delivering the game-winning score in the final minutes.
Newton's firing, it is caught on the run again, inside the 10 game!
He finished that season with 3,379 passing yards and 24 passing touchdowns. But it wasn't just his arm. Newton's mobility continued to be a nightmare for defenses, as he racked up 585 rushing yards and 6 touchdowns on the ground. But more importantly, he became a true leader, carrying the Panthers to an NFC South title with a 12-4 record. And for the first time since 2008, Carolina made the playoffs. They lost in the divisional round, but it looked like at last the Panthers had arrived. Or so we thought. Before the 2014 season even began, Newton underwent surgery for an ankle injury that had bothered him for years.
I'm glad that it happened. My ankle is getting back, and is feeling stronger than ever.
Then, in the preseason, he suffered a fractured rib, forcing him to miss Week 1. And that's just the beginning of the struggles. Because when Newton returned in Week 2, his mobility, which was his greatest weapon, was severely limited. The Panthers started 3-2, but the offense was inconsistent, and the defense took a major step back from its dominant 2013 form. It felt like everything was on the verge of collapse. And it was. From Week 6 to Week 13, the Panthers didn't win a single game, going 0-6-1. The offensive line was awful, causing Newton to take relentless hits, and the lack of weapons around him didn't help. And just when things seemed like they couldn't get worse, disaster struck. On December 9th, just days after leading the Panthers to a win over the Saints, Newton was involved in a serious car accident.
NFL star Cam Newton, quarterback, recovering in the hospital this morning after a frightening car crash. His pickup flipped after colliding with another car.
His truck flipped over multiple times, and he suffered 2 fractures in his back. It looked like his season was over. With the unpredictable nature of back injuries, some even thought his career could be over. But not Cam Newton. He had other plans.
I'm looking at this truck and I'm like, somebody's supposed to be dead. And, I just can't stop smiling because it's like God had his hands on me.
Just 2 weeks after the accident, he had already returned to the field. And he didn't just play. He led Carolina to back-to-back wins to close the season. On top of that, thanks to the NFC South being historically weak, the Panthers won the division with a 7-8-1 record, making the playoffs despite their losing record. In the wild card round, Newton led Carolina to a 27-16 win over the Arizona Cardinals, his first career playoff victory. But the Panthers' run ended the following week with a 31-17 loss to the Seahawks. Still, the message was clear. Cam Newton was a true warrior. He overcame injuries, a weak supporting cast, and a near-death experience to drag his team to the playoffs and get a win. And that toughness was rewarded as he was given a new contract entering the 2015 season. Plus, he finally had a healthy body and a bigger chip on his shoulder than ever. But just before the season began, Carolina suffered a devastating setback. Their number one receiver, Kelvin Benjamin, tore his ACL in training camp. Without Benjamin, the Panthers were left with one of the weakest receiving corps in the league, so most analysts wrote them off. And they probably would have been right if it weren't for Cam carrying his team at an historic level. From the very start, Newton played with a different level of confidence. In fact, he led Carolina to a 14-0 start, making impossible plays week after week, whether it was stiff-arming defenders, throwing pinpoint deep passes, or running through linebackers. He was simply unstoppable. Newton threw for 3,837 yards and 35 touchdowns. But what made his season special was how he dominated as both a passer and a runner. He racked up 636 rushing yards and 10 touchdowns, becoming the first NFL quarterback in history to throw for 30-plus touchdowns and rush for 10-plus touchdowns in a single season. By year's end, it wasn't just about the stats. Newton had completely changed the way the quarterback position was viewed in the NFL. Never before had we seen the freakiest athlete on the field also be the quarterback. And for his dominance, Newton was named NFL MVP, becoming the first quarterback in history to win the award while leading his team in rushing touchdowns. And his season was far from finished, because after going 15-1, the Panthers entered the playoffs as the number one seed in the NFC, and Newton, yet again, took his game to another level. In the divisional round against Seattle, he helped Carolina jump out to a 31-0 lead, completely dismantling the Legion of Boom. Then, in the NFC Championship game against Arizona, he put on one of the greatest playoff performances ever, throwing for 335 yards, 2 touchdowns, and adding 2 more rushing scores in a 49-15 beatdown. Cam was truly at the peak of his powers, and Carolina was heading to Super Bowl 50. Enter the Denver Broncos' elite defense. Led by Von Miller, the Broncos sacked Newton 6 times, forced multiple fumbles, and held Carolina to just 10 points in the big game. But the most brutal blow came in the fourth quarter. When down 16-10, Newton fumbled, and instead of diving for the ball, he made a business decision.
Cam Newton decides not to dive in there and back away from it.
A move that still haunts him to this day.
It ain't no excuse for me not jumping on the fumble. I should have jumped.
Denver recovered, sealed the win, and just like that, Newton's dream season ended in heartbreak. But despite the Super Bowl loss, Cam Newton's 2015 season remains one of the most dominant by a quarterback in NFL history. And for that reason, it felt like the 26-year-old was just entering his prime. But somehow things started to go downhill. In 2016, Newton and the Panthers were out of sync. The offense that had looked so unstoppable the year before now seemed sluggish and inconsistent. During the season opener against the Broncos, Newton took several brutal hits to the head, some of which clearly should have drawn penalty flags. But no calls were made. He was battered all night by Denver's defense as the Panthers lost 21-20. The offensive line that had protected Cam so well the year before suddenly looked overmatched. The defense took a step back after losing star cornerback Josh Norman in free agency. And most importantly, Newton just wasn't playing at the same level. Through the first 4 weeks, he had more turnovers than passing touchdowns, and Carolina stumbled to a 1-3 record. Then, during a Week 4 game against the Atlanta Falcons, Newton took a vicious hit while trying to score on a 2-point conversion. And not even Cam's toughness could make him immune to a concussion, forcing him to miss Week 5. But what many didn't realize at the time was that he had also injured his throwing shoulder earlier in the season. Newton played through the pain for the rest of the year, but it was obvious that something wasn't right. His mechanics looked off, and his accuracy was fading. By mid-season, the injury had worsened, limiting his ability to throw deep passes. Then, finally, he revealed that he had been playing with a partially torn rotator cuff, an issue that would eventually require surgery. The losses piled up. Newton tried to keep the Panthers afloat, but without a healthy shoulder and an inconsistent supporting cast, Carolina never found its rhythm. After a Week 13 40-7 whooping at the hands of the Seahawks, the Panthers were officially eliminated from playoff contention, just 1 year after going 15-1. So Newton spent the offseason recovering from shoulder surgery. And while the hope was that he would get back to the MVP version of himself, there were serious concerns about his overall health. At his best, Newton was one of the most unstoppable forces in the league. But could he continue playing his powerhouse brand of football after already taking so many hits and playing through so many injuries? The 2017 season started off slow, but by mid-season, Newton had rediscovered his rhythm. He wasn't quite playing at his 2015 MVP level, but he was still one of the most dangerous dual-threat quarterbacks in the league. The Panthers' run game was unstoppable, thanks to the combination of Cam and rookie running back Christian McCaffrey. Cam led game-winning drives against the Vikings, Packers, and Buccaneers, showing that he could still take over when it mattered most. And by the end of the year, the Panthers finished 11-5, earning a wild-card spot in the playoffs. Newton finished the regular season with 3,302 passing yards, 22 passing touchdowns, and another 754 yards, along with 6 touchdowns on the ground. In their wild-card matchup with the New Orleans Saints, Carolina trailed 31-19 late in the fourth quarter, but Newton refused to go down without a fight. He threw for 349 yards and 2 touchdowns, nearly leading a miraculous comeback before the Panthers fell just short, losing 31-26. But even in defeat, Cam's performance reminded everyone that he was still special. That said, by the end of the season, he was once again dealing with shoulder soreness and limited throwing power, a problem that would only grow worse in the coming years. In 2018, Newton came out on fire. He looked more accurate, was making quicker reads, and was completing passes at a career-high rate. The Panthers started 6-2, and Cam was playing some of the best football of his career. Carolina's offense was clicking. Christian McCaffrey was emerging as a superstar, and Cam himself was spreading the ball around efficiently. But then everything fell apart. In Week 10 against the Steelers, Newton took a crushing hit from TJ Watt while throwing, and the shoulder that had been a lingering problem throughout his career was never the same. Over the next 7 games, Newton's arm strength vanished. His deep passes lost velocity, and he struggled to push the ball downfield. His accuracy dropped, and the Panthers collapsed. After starting 6-2, they lost 7 straight games, falling completely out of playoff contention. Cam fought through the pain, but it was clear that something was seriously wrong. Even routine throws became difficult, so the Panthers shut him down for the final 2 games. And after the season, Newton underwent another shoulder surgery, his second in 2 years. And on top of that shoulder surgery, Newton was also dealing with foot issues that had begun bothering him late in the previous season. Despite these concerns, Carolina still believed in Cam. He was only 30 years old, and they knew if he could just get healthy again, he was still one of the most dangerous quarterbacks in the league. But that was a big if. Newton made it through training camp and started Week 1 of the 2019 season against the Rams, but he wouldn't make it past Week 2. Early in the game, Cam re-aggravated a Lisfranc injury in his foot, a painful condition that makes it nearly impossible for a quarterback to step into their throws properly. He finished the game, but looked completely out of sync, missing throws he normally made with ease, and that turned out to be his last game in a Panthers uniform for at least a couple of years. After spending 9 years as the face of the Carolina Panthers, Cam Newton was released on March 24, 2020. It was the end of an era, and for months, no team showed any serious interest in signing him. A former MVP, still just 31 years old, sitting in free agency with no offers. But then, in late June, the New England Patriots took a chance, signing Newton to a 1-year, incentive-heavy deal worth up to $7.5 million. With Tom Brady gone, the Patriots needed a quarterback, and Cam needed a fresh start. It seemed like the perfect match. Despite joining the team late in the offseason and dealing with the challenges of a COVID-restricted training camp, Newton won the starting job over Jarrett Stidham and Brian Hoyer. And in Week 1 against Miami, he made an immediate impact, rushing for 75 yards and 2 touchdowns in a 21-11 Patriots win. In Week 2 against Seattle, he nearly pulled off a legendary comeback, throwing for 397 yards and a touchdown, while adding 2 more scores on the ground. On the final play, with the Patriots down by 5 on the 1-yard line, Newton attempted to power into the end zone, but was stuffed by the Seahawks defense. But despite the loss, Cam looked fantastic, and many believed Super Cam was back. Through the first 3 weeks, New England was 2-1, and Newton was playing some of his best football in years. He looked comfortable in Bill Belichick's system, leading a run-heavy offense that played to his strengths. But just as things were clicking, they once again fell apart. In early October, Newton tested positive for COVID-19 and was forced to miss Week 4 against the Chiefs. And without him, the Patriots' offense was awful. Then when Cam returned in Week 6, something was off. His timing, decision-making, and throwing mechanics all looked worse. Whether it was a lack of practice, the lingering effects of COVID, or just a regression, he struggled badly. Over his next 4 games, Newton threw 0 touchdowns and 5 interceptions, and the Pats went 1-3 during that stretch. The once promising season was slipping away. The Patriots missed the playoffs for the first time since 2008, finishing 7-9. And by the end of the year, it was clear Newton wasn't the long-term answer in New England. So, once again, Cam was a free agent. And once again, it seemed no one wanted him. At 32 years old, it looked as if his days as a starting quarterback were behind him. But then, in early November, a shocking opportunity opened up. In Week 9 of the 2021 season, the Carolina Panthers were struggling. Their starting quarterback, Sam Darnold, had suffered a fractured shoulder, and with no clear replacement, the team reached out to Cam. And on his very first snap, he ran for a touchdown. The Panthers blew out the Cardinals 34-10. And it felt like Cam had breathed new life into the team. But after a solid game against Washington, Newton's struggles returned. In Week 12 against Miami, he completed just 5 of 21 passes for 92 yards, throwing 2 interceptions before being benched. The Panthers lost 33-10, and after their bye week, Newton never regained his early magic. Over the next 4 weeks, he went 0-4 as a starter, failing to throw for more than 200 yards in any game. Carolina ended the season on a 7-game losing streak, finishing 5-12. And after the season, the Panthers did not re-sign Newton, nor did anyone else. His 2021 return to Carolina was a great story, but in the end, it was just that, a story. The version of Cam Newton that once dominated the league was gone. And by 2022, so was his NFL career. He technically still hasn't retired, but it's pretty clear that he'll never play in the league again.
Cam, are you planning on retiring? No.
Cam Newton had a pretty short career and an even shorter prime. So how good was Cam Newton actually? He didn't have pinpoint accuracy like Drew Brees, he wasn't a master of pre-snap reads like Peyton Manning, and he didn't have the longevity of Tom Brady. But what he did have was a rare combination of size, speed, and power that the NFL had never seen before. At 6'5", 245 pounds, he could bulldoze linebackers like a running back, outrun defensive backs like a wide receiver, and launch a football 60 yards downfield with ease. At his best, he was unstoppable. Defenses had no answer for him. If they played and the coverage was good, he'd take off and torch him with his legs. If they stacked the box, he'd hit him over the top with his cannon of an arm. And in the red zone, he was a cheat code. No quarterback in history scored more rushing touchdowns than Newton. He was the 2015 NFL MVP, leading the league in total touchdowns. And he's the only quarterback ever with over 75 rushing touchdowns and over 30,000 passing yards. At his peak, he single-handedly willed the Panthers to a Super Bowl appearance. But his impact goes far beyond the surface level. He helped revolutionize the quarterback position, paving the way for guys like Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, and Jaden Daniels. And that's how good Cam Newton was, actually. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, stick with Blitz, subscribe, and check out some of our other content right here.